So
Recording in progress.
Good day. Today we have Blaine McIntosh. He's an accomplished leader with over 15 years of experience in his known field. For strategic vision, ability to drive substantial growth, Blaine has successfully led numerous teams to exceed targets and achieve outstanding results. His journey is marked by resilience, having successfully navigated his own path to addiction recovery. This personal experience has deeply influenced his leadership style, fostering a positive and motivating work environment where well-being and collective effort are prioritized. Blaine integrates mindfulness practices into his daily routine, underscoring his commitment to continuous learning and growth. His dedicated to personal development and recovery makes him a standout figure in both his professional community and the broader conversation on addiction recovery. Good morning, Blaine.
Good morning, brother. How are you?
Great. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
Can you share your journey and how your mindset has evolved over the years?
I think like as far back as I can remember, up until I guess I'd want to say the last 5 years, but probably more so the last 2 years, I really felt like I was a victim of my circumstance. So I love my parents to death, but they were babies raising babies. My mom was 17, my dad was 20. So to say that I had what I felt was stability in the home from a young age, it just wasn't there. And I always blamed people, places, and things. Like I had a realization a few months ago that maybe I was born with a positive mindset and a growth mindset, but through my younger years and into my teenage years and my early 20s, I really had a victim mindset where it was poor me, and that poor me and that fear turned into, I'd say, my first drug of choice, which is rage. Like a lot of people's stories, I had a lot of unfortunate things happen when I was a little kid, by people that shouldn't have been doing things to little kids, that left me feeling like I was never safe. And the one place I could go to was never taking accountability for my actions because of what happened. So I always was justified in my anger, and it's not even anger. I mean, I would go to a place where, like, I just saw red, and it was the only place that I felt safe. And as the years went on, I figured out that was not a place that I like to be. So my next logical decision was that I'd use alcohol. So then I had an excuse to be, I won't swear on here to be respectful, but to be a jerk, right? It was always the alcohol, and it was never me. And through the years, I kept using different vices, is alcohol, and then drugs, and then money and power and prestige. And it just continued to be one thing after another, filling a void of not being enough. And eventually I realized that, like, I'm a little bit of a control freak, like some of us, with addictive personalities may be. And I finally realized the only way that I could gain some sort of control was to realize I had no control over what had happened in my past. I have no control over what happens tomorrow. But the only way for me truly to gain control is to let go of the outcome and focus on what can I learn from this experience, from my past failures, my past mistakes. And I've made too many to count, which now gives me the unique ability to turn all those mistakes into opportunities for growth and wisdom. And today, it doesn't mean I'm perfect by any means, I'm far from it, but my ability to look at, I don't wish for things to be easier, I wish for me to become better. And I think that on the opposite side of every setback is an opportunity for growth. As long as I look for what was the opportunity, what was the lesson, what was the ability to build character through that event. So, I mean, kind of going out of victimhood into a victor over the last really 5 years specifically, really just changed the dynamic, because I was always a product of my environment and my circumstance. And it was a horrible place to be. because I couldn't control, I wanted to control everybody. And when I realized the only thing I really needed to control was my actions and my behaviors and doing the next right thing and believing, I'm a firm believer that there's a higher power. What you call that higher power is completely up to you. But that everything happens for a reason, man. And God gives his toughest battles to his toughest soldiers. And there has to be a reason while I'm here, while anyone who's battled with the biggest adversities, there is a reason we are here, because most of us don't make it back. And so I just do my best to lead by example, to share my mistakes in an honest and a humble and authentic way, because we're all broken in our own way, and how we deal with that brokenness is different. But the ability to bounce back from being broken, it just allows myself and then hopefully others to come back stronger from that.
How has this experience or your experience influenced your understanding of addiction, recovery, and personal growth?
Well, I'll tell you my first idea about addiction is you're just a weak-minded person and you have no willpower. If you want to stop something, you just stop it. And that was really my reality. Is I love to party, I love to have fun. I'm an all or nothing personality. There is no like 50%. It's 150% or zero. There is no middle ground. So my mindset originally, looking at and dealing with, my father who had substance abuse issues, and a lot of my family members, before I was deep in addiction, I could drink, and then I was a competitive athlete. When I had a competition coming up, I would stop drinking, I would stop partying, and I could do that over and over and over again until I couldn't. So realizing that it is a quote unquote progressive disease that picks up steam, the more I play with the fire, it's only a matter of time until I get burned. So realizing as soon as I decide to pick up, and it's anything for me, I just don't have an off button, that I lose all control over when I stop. And that mindset wasn't always there. I think I asked for unknowingly a lot of lessons, and God gave them to me through personal experience. So it's really allowed me to lose judgment of others, because I used to be such a judgmental person, especially of other people that were struggling with addiction, because for so long I had the ability to manage that off button. And then I don't know when it was, but one day there just was no off button. There was no off button at all. And if you could remind me of the question, just so I make sure that I answer the whole thing.
So how has your experience influenced your understanding of addiction recovery and personal growth?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, that was the big thing, is realizing that it is progressive, and eventually there is no off button, and everyone's different, right? I know there's people that used to use, I'll just call it heroin or fentanyl, who can, drink like a regular person. That's just not me. That as soon as I start, I don't know how to stop until I burn my life down. And I mean, that's what, I did during COVID, was completely burn my life down. So for me, the biggest lesson is you have control until you don't. And then was it mindset or leadership that transitioned into? I'm sorry.
Personal growth.
Personal growth. Yeah.
So we could just add to the next question. What strategies do you use now to maintain a positive and resilient mindset, especially during challenging times?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So my mom, God bless her soul, and I told her this the other day, I would not be here today if she didn't introduce me to the world of personal development and business. And it's, when I sat there, hopeless and broken and not knowing if I would ever be the same, there was hope of the stories that people have made it out of where I was at. that there's never a hole so dark that we can't get out of as long as we start to look towards the light, is there's always going to be setbacks. And being introduced to that world of, personal development and leadership from a young age, the message I heard from that wasn't a correct message. And I think that it was actually rather destructive in my early years, because all I saw was everyone's glory moments. All I saw was everybody's highlight reels. And 20 years ago, people didn't talk about they didn't talk about the bad days. It was all about the good days. So I thought something was wrong with me. I thought I was broken because I had days where I wasn't motivated. I had days where I wasn't disciplined. And for probably 30 years, I thought that there was something wrong with me, until eventually I realized the difference between average and extraordinary. It's not doing extraordinary things. It's doing ordinary things extraordinarily well. So it's on the days when I don't feel like showing up, that's okay, as long as I show up anyways. And as long as I show up and give whatever my 100% is that day, that's what creates that resilience. So a lot of people want motivation to get going, but it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. It takes discipline to start to build confidence. Through discipline, we create action. Through action, we get results. And through results, we start to build confidence. And on the other side of that confidence is motivation that propels us forward. So just realizing the ability just to show up is enough some days. And we gain more on the days when we're at 1% battery, but we give 100% of that 1% versus taking those days off. So for me, when I have setbacks, and I'm in Oregon, so it like rains more than we see like the sun here. So like seasonal depression or whatever it may be is a real deal. So just having the ability to continue my routine, because my old pattern would be generally around winter, things would like go haywire for me and my sleep would get messed up. I would change my diet. I would stop working out. And on top of that, I have a lot of diagnosed depression in my family, and probably have it as well, is I continue the behavior that I do when I feel like I'm on top of the world, even when I feel like I'm at the bottom. Because I know this shall pass too, that one day at a time, as long as I continue to do the stuff that keeps me between the bumpers on the bad days, that's really how I manage those bad days. Is expecting that they aren't going to come is a disaster for me. And I just have to embrace those as opportunities to push through, even when I don't feel like it. Even when I don't feel like showing up, I show up. And I call them no matter what days. Monday's a no matter what day for me. So no matter what, I go to the gym, and that's the most days. But no matter what means it doesn't matter how much sleep I got, I didn't get, how sick I am. It's just no matter what, I show up, because that sets the tone for my entire week. And it doesn't matter how good or bad that workout was. It's my ability to wake up at 4 a.m. because I hate it. It's my ability to work out because I did it as a profession and I don't like it anymore. It's my ability to persevere in the midst of self-imposed challenges. It's I put myself in those positions that are hard for me because I know it's only a matter of time before I'm put in a hard position where it's me and a drink or it's me and a drug. And I built the muscle now and the discipline to be able to look past that and into the next day in the future on when I may not feel like I need that to fill that void.
What are some common mindset barriers you see in individuals dealing with addiction, and how could you or they overcome them?
Yeah. I think the biggest is thinking we're special. Like, our stories aren't all the same, but our feelings are. Desperation, hopelessness, our lives are unmanageable, not feeling comfortable in our own skin, for me, not feeling good enough. Those are the big things is when I used to look at the differences and not the similarities. So I've always, until, my last explosion of my life, I was a very high achieving drug addict and alcoholic. I made multiple six figures. I ran a multi 7-figure business. And what I'm an egomaniac with an inferiority complex, right? So it's like this pulling back and forth of thinking I'm better than and not thinking I'm worth anything. And once I realized that it doesn't matter our story, that as long as that once I start connecting with the emotional feelings, the story doesn't matter. The outcome is the same. My life had become unmanageable and I was powerless over drugs and alcohol. As soon as I decided to pick up, as soon as I decided to drink or use, it was off to the races. And the other, I think, is just being a victim, man. Like, just realizing we can't control what happened to us, but we can control how we respond moving forward. I've worked the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and one of those is like doing a thorough moral inventory. And a common theme through there was, my pride and ego were always hurt. And I was filled with so much fear. It's so much fear of like, what if it doesn't work for me? What if I can't get sober and then I'm going to be miserable forever? So it kept me always relapsing, because I would think so far into the future. Even today, I cannot imagine being sober forever. And maybe some people will say they can. I just personally can't. I know I'm just one bad decision away from back where a homeless drug addict with a $1,000 a day drug habit. It maybe not that much. I don't make that kind of money anymore, but it all the same, right? Homeless, lost everything. And I lost my train of thought. Filled with fear. Thinking of having to be sober forever is scary. And as long as I hold on, I can really do anything, and we all can, for 24 hours. As long as I hold on to 24 hours and I have support systems in place, I think that's extremely important. Is what keeps a lot of, I think, addicts from getting sober is realizing that we can't change the past, and our past does not dictate our future. Getting out of our own way and realizing we don't have the answers, that find somebody that has what you want and ask what they did to get where they are. I finally started taking suggestions, because for me, my willpower never ended in a good place. Something very simple but very profound, I think, is it helps me stay sober on a daily basis. And it's my thoughts, my behaviors, my actions. I always check my motives. Like, what are my motives behind this? Am I being self-centered? Am I self-seeking? Are my motives pure? As long as my intentions are directed in the appropriate area, I know that I got another 24 hours. A mentor of mine said you have to do, I think it was 5 things on a daily basis, and I only have to get 2 right. He said, try not to lie, cheat, or steal. He said, do your best to get those right every single day. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world. And more so, that's inward, right? Did I lie to myself? Did I cheat myself or steal from myself or my future? And then he said, you have to do 2 perfectly every day, and this works. He said, don't drink and don't use. And if I check those boxes and the last 2 for sure, then I don't want to say it's all smooth sailing, but I continue to sail in the right direction.
How do you integrate principles of addiction recovery into your leadership and management style?
Do the next right thing, So I think living a life of recovery, and there's a big difference. Relapse is not a part of recovery. Relapse is a part of addiction, and I use a ton of resources from recovery and leadership, because recovery is about being a better version of yourself than you were the day before, being aligned physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I think all those core concepts line up in business. At the end of the day, I take an inventory of my behaviors and my actions. When I was wrong, I promptly admit it. A daily reprieve, I reflect back on my previous day to see what I did well, to see what I can improve upon, and quote unquote, to make amends for anything that I did to harm somebody else. And it's no different in business and leadership. Is the biggest thing in leadership is taking personal accountability. And that's what recovery is about. Recovery is about taking personal accountability for our actions and finally stopping the blame game and taking ownership. We are the only ones that can cause us to pick up and drink. We're the only ones that can cause us to crush that shit up and snort it up our nose. We're the only ones that can pull the rig and use the needle. We're the only ones that can make those decisions, and it's no different in leadership. Is once we realize that we can be our biggest ally or our biggest enemy, it's game changing. And I run sales organizations and sales teams, and something I focus on day in and day out is we can't control the outcome. All we can control is our process and our actions. And that is 100% the same in recovery. November 3rd, 2021, I got in an accident right in between getting sober. And I'm finally having to pay the consequences of those decisions during that time in my life. And, it was an 11-year prison sentence. Then it was a 2-year prison sentence. And now it's a 90-day jail sentence. And that could have been a very good reason, the old thinking, for me to continue not to stay sober, but actually a reason for me to get loaded or to drink, is the what's to come and the fear of the unknown. I can't control any of that. I couldn't control that through the last 2.5 years while this case was ongoing, but all I could control was my behavior. And I think a vision is so important, right? Does this behavior bring me closer or further away from who I want to be tomorrow? I mean, in recovery, it's really that easy. Is this decision going to help me get closer to the version I want to be of myself? What is that in leadership? Does the actions I'm about ready to take bring me closer or further away from the leader I want to be for myself, for my family, for my team, for my tribe? And I just try to keep it so simple. I'm not that smart. So I just like to get really good at simple things that I can do day in and day out. And the easiest thing I can do is focus on me. I can't control anybody else. I can lead by example. I don't have to talk a lot. I just have to lead by example. And that's what helped me get sober, is watching a family member go from rock bottom to an amazing life over the last decade. She didn't say anything to me. She just had what I wanted. And I think the biggest thing with recovery is it's not about what we say to people. It's about that life that we live that inspires people to believe they can get sober too. And that's no different in leadership. It's the same thing, man. No matter what people think, you are a leader to somebody. There's somebody that's watching your behavior, and it's either lighting a fire for them to do something they didn't know they could do, or it's giving them a reason to quit on themselves. So I act like the mic is always on. I don't change my behavior based on who I think is watching. Integrity is not a part-time game. You either have integrity or you don't. And I try to do my best to be proud of my actions and behaviors, no matter who's watching. It's the same thing in recovery.
What advice would you give to someone in a high-stress environment?
Yeah.
Who is also battling addiction?
Yeah. It's a good question. Get out of it? No, I'm just kidding. I think it's really know thyself, and if the high stress environment is too much, understand the situations you have control over. And if you think that situation is going to cause you to drink or use, then remove yourself from the situation. And you can go anywhere you want and stay sober as long as you have a good reason for being there. But then you also have to have an exit plan if the waters get choppy and you're leading down the wrong road. But for me, sales is always high stress. Leadership is high stress. We're dealing with, almost being an adult babysitter. So, we're dealing with other people's emotions. Is Monday through Friday, I have a very structured routine. And for me, I think physically moving my body and having time to quiet my mind is so important. And understanding that other people's problems don't have to become my problems. I always tried to take ownership for other people's outcomes and I can't control anyone else's outcome. But what I can control, and you'll probably hear a common theme, is I can control my actions and my behaviors. And as long as, for me personally, as long as I know what my intentions were and what my truth is, what someone else thinks about me or what someone else does, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it doesn't hurt as bad when I'm quote unquote rejected. So when I was always in high stress environments, I was always worried, that imposter syndrome, that I was going to be found out or that I was going to fail. And I was always worried about the outcome. I was always so outcome focused instead of process and behavior focused. So in any sort of stressful environment, there's a few different things that you want to have. One is the appropriate mindset. You want to have a growth mindset 100%, because then every failure is just a setup for moving forward. There's two different things, right? There's being a failure and there's failing. Being a failure is a mindset. Failing is part of the process. And there's a big difference. One's an identity. Being a failure is an identity. It's an ego identity versus failing and understanding that's part of the process. It just opens up so many more doors for opportunities for growth. So having the right mindset is the biggest one in a high stress environment. Realizing that we aren't going to save the world. A lot of times we think we have to be the saviors, and that if we don't work 60 or 70 or 80 hours a week, that, the company is going to go bankrupt, or who knows, we'll be fired. I think setting clear boundaries is extremely important. I used to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And whenever they said to show up, whenever they needed somebody to stay late, I always raised my hand, because I wanted acceptance and I wanted significance. And I did things based on having an expectation on how I'd be treated on the other side. So one is setting those boundaries of when you need to separate and have time to recharge your batteries. And then the other is do things because that's the type of person you are, not because of an expectation of an outcome you think somebody will give you on the other side. So I think expectations and being let down is a recipe for disaster. It creates resentments, and it talks about resentments are one of the number one reasons we relapse, is when we feel like somebody did us wrong, and we don't know how to manage those emotions and those feelings. So mindset, boundaries, and then not setting expectations on outcomes of what we expect from other people. And then have your own routine, what fills up your cup. And it's different for everybody. And what I mean by fills up your cup, that after you get done doing it, you feel better than when you started. This to say, I hate going to the gym at 5 a.m, but every single time, like today, I thought about it for 30 minutes walking around my house, coming up with every reason on why I shouldn't go, even though it was a no matter what. And finally, for me, this is how I have to talk to myself, man up, Lane, follow through with your word, act like the lights are on. Stop breaking promises to yourself. So for me, even though I know it's uncomfortable, after I get my body moving, it stimulates the blood flow, it gets my mind going. So for me, that's how I wind down. And then on the weekends, I have one day where I do absolutely nothing. I watch probably too much TV on that day. I do a lot of learning, work on some business stuff. But before, I never could give myself a break. So I have planned days of nothingness, because that's the only way I can kind of manage the anxiety of not constantly being busy.
How do you foster a supportive and non-judgmental environment for those around you, people that you work, coach, teach?
I think it's a very interesting thing about having a supportive environment, because you have to be able to understand the people you're trying to support. So I can deliver a message that is meant to be empowering, and there could be 10 people in the room. 8 of them could hear the empowerment, and 2 of them will hear they're being belittled. So what I think is really important is if you are in like a leadership environment and you are surrounded by other people, is paying attention to what it seems like the other people are taking from the message. And this is something that I never used to do before. And I think it's extremely important, is when somebody when they take a negative meaning out of a message I meant to be positive, is apologizing for how you made them feel, not for what I said, but for how I made them feel. I think that is really, really important. Also, I think that I create a safe environment because I talk about my imperfections. I don't have to be perfect all the time. I used to always, everything on the outside looked good, but I was so broken on the inside that I didn't leave any room for other people to be vulnerable because I wasn't vulnerable. So the more willing I am to share my mistakes and my setbacks and my monumental F-ups in life, in an authentic, compassionate way, and then I also show a way out of that, because hitting rock bottom, the cause may be different, but we've all had those moments in life where we felt like it couldn't get any worse. And that for me, was 3 years ago. But sharing those moments and being vulnerable where I may be judged and people may talk behind my back and do all these things, but being okay in the moment, sharing my experience, the strength I took from that, and the future that I want to help others build, I think is super empowering. And then what was the second part of that question? I'm sorry.
So fostering a supportive and non-judgmental environment for those around you. You really pretty.
Okay, cool.
We're answering that question. So how do you balance the demands of your career with your need for self-care and recovery?
So what I will tell you is addiction took everything away from me. It took away. And it's not the monetary stuff. I lost all that too. But that's where I used to think would fill that void. But it's the relationships and the trust. By the end, I was spiritually bankrupt. I was physically bankrupt. I was mentally bankrupt, financially bankrupt, and I had no relationships. Recovery hasn't given me back everything, but it's given me back everything that's important. And what is important is my sobriety today, my ability to lead by example, not by my words, but by my actions. And it's slowly given me back the relationships and the ability for others to trust me when I say I'm going to do something, when I say I'm going to show up. And that's really the most important. So what I have to remember is without my sobriety, nothing else matters, because it's only a matter of time before I lose it all anyways. So I like fancy stuff. I like nice things. But at the end of the day, none of that shit matters. None of that matters, because as soon as I put anything in front of my recovery and being sober, it's just a matter of time before I lose everything. That's the big one. The other is like setting those boundaries. So I'll just give you an example. The owner of the business I work for can be a little last minute, as most business owners are, because they're crazy busy. So randomly, he'd be like, oh, let's stay late for a meeting. So I don't have any problem staying late. But what I have a problem with is not having a plan and a structure in place where we can be respectful of other people's obligations. So I just set a boundary. I'll stay late, I have no problem, but it needs to be on a set day at a set time. So it's just feeling comfortable enough and confident enough that that's actually how you're supposed to communicate, that's how adults communicate, is they have conversations about what works and what doesn't work. That was foreign to me. All I understood was yelling. I didn't know that you could actually talk about when things were uncomfortable. So I think that's really important, is setting those boundaries and being able to communicate what you need, in an environment, and then what you don't need, what doesn't help you. And then the last part of that question, I'm sorry.
So How do you balance the demands of your career with the need for self-care and recovery?
Got it. Perfect. Okay, cool. So yeah, one is making sure recovery comes first, setting boundaries and realizing that communication is part of that. And then the last is like, it's once again, just doing the things that fill your cup up. Sometimes I can't get out of my own way, so I have to ask myself this question, and it's very simple. It's, what would be the downside to? So when I'm on the fence about getting outside or going on a hike or reading a book or seeing friends or family, or I'm an introvert, man. I'm around people. I have to run, or I don't have to, I get to run a team of 40 different salespeople and 4 different managers and help add value there. But at the end of the day, I need to recharge my batteries. But I also need to, continue to mentor my other personal relationships outside of work, which is something I struggle with still to this day, which I need to spend more time on. But just asking, what would be the downside to? And then, if there's no downside to getting out in nature, if there's no downside to spending time with friends and family, then that's just what I need to do. Because I know long-term, they have been there through the thick and the thin, and the least I can do is show up today in a way where I can be fully present and give back to them. But just know what makes you happy. And don't think you have to do what you think other people should to be happy. I think what makes us, each individual, happy is a very individual thing, and yeah, just being true and authentic to myself is the biggest thing that I can do, is not worrying about what other people think.
What role does community support play in overcoming addiction, and how can this be applied in different settings? You work with a lot of people.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we all want to fit in and belong. It's for thousands of years, that's how we survived. We were in tribes. So even the outcast, per se, the people that want to be different, I hate to burst your bubble, but the best way you know how to fit in is by being different and fitting in with people that are different. So community is huge. Community is huge. They say if you hang around the barber long enough, you're going to get your hair cut. It's the same thing. Is unfortunately, as we continue, or as I transitioned out of an old lifestyle, an old body, an old identity, I then also had to separate myself from not a lot of people at that time. I pretty much hung up by myself, but more so when I was drinking, is I had to separate myself and put myself with like-minded people. Is, what do they say? You're a direct reflection of the 5 closest people you spend the most time with. So ironically enough, a lot of my best friends have stopped drinking. The longer I'd stayed sober and the longer I hadn't drank, is making sure that you're surrounded with people that encourage you, not try to tempt you towards the dark side. So if you're somebody who wants to get sober, and you really have to want to get sober, it's not like you can't just be sober for a little bit. It just, for me, it doesn't work that way. But I guess you just do you. Is the people that are your friends, they will not encourage you to drink. They'll encourage you not to. So making sure you surround yourself with people that have your best interest at heart, that actually care about the things you're trying to accomplish is so important. One of the biggest things with changing a habit is having an accountability or some sort of community that is supportive. I don't want to say you can't do it alone, but I have not heard of many success stories of people doing it alone. What I have heard of is people that have disconnected, that have stopped hanging out with like-minded people, that stopped doing the inner work, that stopped doing their own personal inventories, that stopped reaching out to their peers. All of them have relapsed. And I did too when I did those things. So it's very hard to get eaten by lions if you're in the middle of the herd. So I try to stay in the middle of the herd. It's scary on the outside. And like I said, I'm human. So, I can be my own worst enemy, but I try to stay. I live in a house with 5 other sober people right now. Do I have to financially? No. Does the court make me? No. But I choose to be around like-minded people because that's how important my sobriety is. is I've put myself in a situation that would hurt my ego, being 37 years old and having roommates per se. But once again, if I don't stay sober, I don't got nothing. And that's really the ultimate goal. So it is so, so important to be surrounded with like-minded people, to stay in the middle as much as possible, and to reach out to those people on good days, because it's about building the muscle of repetition. If you wait till the bad day, you won't pick up the phone. If you wait till the bad day, you won't show up. It's about creating the consistency that turns into a new habit through discipline, that on those bad days, it's an automatic behavior that you show up with like-minded people. I go to AA, and like I said, I live with sober people, so I'm always in that community. But if it's virtual, if it's phone calls, but you have to have a support group to be successful, at least long-term. And it's no different in leadership, right? Masterminds are one of the most amazing things, because it's a rare opportunity to be in the middle of that energy with like-minded people in an atmosphere where everyone's supporting everyone to be successful. And I really think that should be the type of environment you try to be in as much as possible. There's nothing worse than feeling like you have to watch your back depending on who you're around. So finding that community where you can be your authentic self, you can show up sad or mad or glad or happy and be supported. And the biggest thing is, I think, being okay with you. Because when we aren't, we feel like everyone is judging us regardless of if they are. But that's just our own internal tape plan. So find people who can believe in you until you can believe in you. And then you can return the favor.
How do you encourage those around you to adopt a growth mindset and pursue continuous personal development?
So I think it was Jim Rohn who said, right, don't take a duck to eagle school. There's only going to be, certain types of people that are going to be more inclined to that direction. But the biggest way I do it is, I think, at least for me, when people tell me what to do, because I'm stubborn and a little blockheaded, is I will almost say no sometimes, even though I know it's in my best interest. When I feel like they're trying to push me to do something, and because I don't know what their agenda is trying to identify what somebody's vision is for their life. What's their vision? And then what is the goal that they're working towards that helps get them to their vision? From there, we can just reverse engineer the things it takes to accomplish that. So what I mean, if somebody wants to make $40,000 a year, that's $20 an hour. That's not very hard to do these days. You can work at McDonald's or Taco Bell and get paid $22 an hour. So trying to align somebody's vision and goals is the first thing. Is the bigger the vision, the bigger the goal, the easier it is to make recommendations on the type of things it takes to accomplish those goals. So I'm never big on telling people what to do, but I am big on making recommendations based on my own personal experience and that of several other successful people. And I'm not just talking about financially, but I'm talking about successful, meaning they are excited when they wake up every day, not like just money. And having a growth mindset is part of that. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is every mistake or every setback is a negative. So I always try to ask myself, and I'm not here to teach anybody what to think, more so try to help teach people how to think. And part of it is, how does this mindset serve me? How does thinking I'm a victim serve me? How does not wanting to push myself and grow and be uncomfortable, how does that serve me? And if they can continue to ask themselves that very simple question, does this get me closer or further away from where I want to go? And then how does this action or behavior serve me moving forward? And then I want them to come to their own conclusion on having a growth mindset, on investing in themselves. We should be investing more in ourselves than we do in our job. So many people think that we need to invest in skill sets, but we need to spend more time investing in our mindset. Our skill sets will never out-earn our mindset. it's impossible. Where most of us want to focus so much on what are the skills I can get instead of mastering this superpower which everyone has, which is our mind, but so few people spend any time focusing on learning how to control it. So I just try to reverse engineer it. Is everyone's going to have different goals and a vision, and then asking them what do they think it would take to get there, and then they generally reverse engineer into those type of qualities. And the best way to make something stick is to have it be their idea, not my idea.
And what resources or practices have you found most effective in maintaining a healthy mindset and supporting your addiction recovery?
One more time, Jeff.
What resources or practices have you found most effective in maintaining a healthy mindset and supporting addiction recovery? I know you said you go to the gym.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few different things. That's one of the activities. Me personally, is I have to fellowship, meaning be around like-minded, sober people. Work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That just helps me work through my own BS. Giving back what was so freely given to me, which is sharing my experience, strength, and hope with others. Having a conscious contact with a higher power. Of my understanding, which I call God, essentially just meaning that there is a reason behind all the madness in my life, that as long as I have faith and I do the next right thing, everything will work out. It doesn't mean it'll work out the way I want it to, but it will work out the way it's supposed to. And then continuing, to try to understand my thinking, because it's my thinking that got me into the mess in the first place. But it's also my thinking that's going to continue to keep me out of that mess. Those are big things. And then the other for me, I think having a physically fit body, and I'm not saying you have to be a bodybuilder, right? But being able to move your body, there's just so many benefits to being active, that I would, if I can make one recommendation to anybody that's getting sober or trying to get sober or has been on the ups and downs of sobriety, is replace your drinking time with gym time. Because the thing about changing behavior is it's very difficult to get rid of a bad habit if it's not replaced with another habit. That's one of the reasons, that groups and meetings work so well, is instead of going to the bar after work, you go sit with a group of other people that have a similar problem or something along those lines. So for me, I mean, being active was one of my saving graces. If you want something different, you have to do something different. And continuing to push myself physically is extremely important. Also, every morning, I pray. Just that God will show me his will for my life. Use my words to share his message through my voice, the strength and courage to be my highest, genuine, bold self, and to help someone else that is struggling. And just getting out of my own way and thinking about others before I think about myself is being of service is the most rewarding thing ever. When you can help somebody else have that light bulb go off, it's the best high ever. Is realizing that you made a positive difference, especially with all the bad decisions I've made. The most powerful thing I can do is, help someone else realize that there's a better way. It may not be easy, but it definitely is better. Yeah.
Love it. That's perfect. Helping other people. That's why we're here. I want to thank you for sharing your message. And if you had one thing one thing maybe that you could say to someone who's looking to start the recovery journey or is in that dark spot where they feel like they'll never get sober, because we're here to foster hope to you, is there like maybe one message you might have for
Yeah. As long as you got a breath in your chest, you got a fighting chance. And no matter how many times you failed, it doesn't mean you can't be successful. What I will say is getting sober is possible no matter what your story is. That there's other people that care. There's other people that have been there.
That's perfect.
There's no action or behaviors too atrocious to rebound back from, as long as you have faith and commitment to start living life in a different way. Yeah, man, if you're somebody that wants to get sober, there's a great community that wants to help you get there. But you also have to be ready. You have to have the gift of desperation. You have to have the gift of desperation. If you don't know which way's up and which way's down, then find somebody that's been sober for a little bit and ask them what they did. And then shut the hell up and listen, and then take some direction. That would be it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much.
Of course, brother.
Recording stopped.
Amazing. You really do have that leadership going. You're gonna love HCL.
Cool.
It is. I mean, yeah. You're